Welcome to Stoked with Megan McPhail, the podcast that helps you get super effing jazzed about your work, life, and bank account. I'm your host, Megan McPhail, a former burnt-out emergency veterinarian that quit my hard-earned career to become a seven-figure business coach, entrepreneur, and elopement photographer. Now I'm living a life I absolutely love, full of travel, adventure, and financial abundance, and I am hell-bent on inspiring others to do the same. Are you ready to say goodbye to the 9-to-5 grind and start going after some big, bold dreams? Then let's dive into this week's episode. Hey, it's your host, Megan McPhail.
And your co-host, Todd.
And today we have episode 54, Signs that you are on the right track. And I wanted to do this. It's a nice little summary of what a lot of our podcast episodes are about. But once you decide that society's version of things doesn't fit and kind of sucks, and your life sucks because you try to do things society's way, and now you want to live life on your own terms and build a business that supports you and what you want to do in your life, then you have to check in with yourself and see if you're on the right track towards accomplishing that. So the right track for society, and for me, used to be getting an advanced degree, doing really well in school, becoming a doctor, specializing in veterinary surgery and emergency medicine, and then, buying a house, getting set up at a practice, buying a nice car, getting married, having kids, all that kind of stuff. And I remember driving to work one day when I had the epiphany that none of this was what I wanted, and how did I end up here? And I'm not happy with any of this. So I was not on the right track at that point. But Todd basically came up with our own signs that show that you're on the right track. So we're going to go over them. So as far as society goes, Todd, what was your right track, quote unquote, that you thought you were on? When you thought you were doing everything the right way?
I think pretty similar to you. Get good grades, get into the best college that I could, do well, get a career, a safe job at a big corporation. Even though that probably wasn't explicit, it just probably made me feel better that I was going to go to work at a big place, a name brand engineering firm that people knew. But then also, the typical thing too, right? Family, friends. I know when I picked my college, I picked it because it had an equal guy to girl ratio. Definitely.
So you're going to find your wife there.
I definitely was going to find my wife in college.
Yeah.
That did not happen. I also thought kind of set 5-year plans, and then that never happened.
Yeah. Well, you're told, what's your 5-year plan? What's going to be your 20-year plan or whatever? So I came up with 5 signs that you're on the right track. And I think Todd came up with 6. And they're similar but different. So we're going to go through each of them. So we'll start with mine. The first one is alignment with your values and your purpose. So I feel like a lot of people, when they describe to me why they don't like their jobs or why they don't like what they're doing in their life and why they want to change it, it's really because there isn't an alignment with your core values. And your core values, there's a ton of resources online where you can do them, but it's things like adventure or truth or honesty or family or creativity or honor, trustworthiness. There's just a ton of words that you can essentially use to kind of communicate or identify your innate core values. And your work and your life should really align with those values. And if they aren't, you just feel like something is off. So being able to align your work and your life with your values really makes everything click into place, and you will have a better sense of fulfillment and meaning, and you'll just feel better about everything. Sign number 2 is that you are making tangible progress towards your goals, both in your personal and professional life, that you have a clear vision of what you want your business and your personal life to look like, and you are taking consistent steps to move closer to that vision. That vision will continue to get bigger and grander over time. So you never really, at least in my experience, you don't get to that vision ever. It gets bigger and better as you accomplish more and more and more. It's not something that where you just I've reached my goal, I've reached my vision.
I've heard that described as a horizon goal. So think of the horizon, if you were to chase the sunset or going for the horizon, you can make progress, but you're never going to catch it or get there. So
it's just showing you where to go.
Yeah.
The direction, so you don't get pulled off track.
Yeah. And it could change over time, but it's just always out there. Like there's more steps.
And I think that's a weird thing for a lot of people. This idea that like you make goals and they get bigger and you never truly ever finish achieving them. Like there's never a day where you're like, well, I've achieved everything I've ever wanted to achieve. That's it for me, Whereas I did feel that way in my career as a veterinary professional, where I felt like I did get to a stage in my career where there was no more goals for me. It was literally just riding out the clock. And, I already knew what I needed to know. I was making the money I was pretty much going to make forever. And there wasn't anything else to work towards unless you counted like saving money and buying a house or something. But as an entrepreneur, I feel like there's constantly goals that you're going after. And that makes my brain and my heart and my soul very happy because when you spend your whole life achieving things, like even graduating from a grade or getting a certain grade on a test, getting a degree, and then you move to the next step and the next step, and then all of a sudden there's nothing to move up to anymore, like it's very disheartening.
I agree. In my experience, I don't think I had gotten there, but I'm kind of thinking, as you were speaking that out, I was thinking kind of like more of like the small little steps. Like I remember early in my engineering career, my office mate said like, don't worry about your to-do list because you'll never get it done. And that was like eye-opening for me at the point because like before, I guess from like my education, if you got through the assignments and you like got caught up on the readings, once you finish classes,
you're done.
Or your projects, yeah, it's done. But with like your career, it's just like forever.
Yeah.
Until you graduate, right? So or until you retire. So like, yeah, that to-do list or that idea that the to-do list will never get completed, that's what made me think as you were talking.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, because you end every year with like summer vacation, everything's been accomplished and you have like a clean slate. And then once you're out of school, that like never happens ever again. I mean, I was kind of lucky as a veterinarian because my to-do list was only for that shift. It didn't really like carry on from shift to shift. I wasn't like managing projects or having any long-term anything. It was really just like the animals I saw that night. But it was still just like every shift is just going to be chaos. And that's just all I have to look forward to forever. Like that was unnerving to me. Okay, sign number 3 that you're on the right track is that you're making a positive impact and you're receiving positive feedback and appreciation. So making a positive impact on others, whether it's clients, your community, your family, people you know, that is a huge part, I think, of, creating a life that's fulfilling and a business that's fulfilling. I personally don't think I could ever create a business that didn't help people in some way or people didn't love it in some way, So that positive feedback and recognition that you get and like hearing people's experiences with you, that kind of affirms or reaffirms your work and your life and your purpose. And that appreciation is hugely important for having a good quality of life. And I think that's missing from a lot of people's lives is receiving appreciation for the work that they do. I just don't think psychologically anyone could be fulfilled in their work if they weren't receiving appreciation.
Yeah, and that's a tough one too, because part of me knows that I should be fulfilled like internally with my progress or like my output. And so, yeah, it's a fine balance of like needing and wanting that feedback and like positive reinforcement from others. But I also relying too much on that, I think is kind of a detriment.
Well, yeah, I feel like that's important too. Yeah, you got to love what you're doing and know that it's important. Like I remember hearing about, this is like from a friend of a friend, and they knew some guy who sold like fencing that made a ton of money. And they're like, oh man, who knew that owning a fencing business could be so lucrative or something? And then a friend's dad, like back in college, rented dumpsters and made a lot of money through that. And I'm like, that's cool and everything. I'm sure that people appreciate having dumpsters and fences and whatnot. But like for me, I feel like I don't feel like that's making enough difference in the world for me to really get behind that and be like, yeah, this is what I'm going to put all my time and energy towards, as building this dumpster rental business. Like, I feel like I need to make an impact on others, and I want to hear that from them as well. And I don't think that's like selfish on my part or anything. I think that this idea that we're supposed to just inherently know the work we're doing is positive, I think comes from like that toxic corporate bullshit. Because even as a veterinarian, I was saving lives, but I still didn't feel appreciated because nobody, not even owners. In fact, the animals that came in the sickest that we saved, that was like the biggest, like, oh my God, I can't believe we saved this dog's life and he's going home a week later after this horrible illness or traumatic injury or something. Those are always the owners that were the most pissed off because their bill was high and they didn't realize we were like working 24/7. So then they'd come back and leave horrible reviews or try to take us to the board and stuff. It was really weird. And then like my boss and my colleagues, they never were like, good job. And like that affected me, that nobody ever cared that I was working my ass off and I was sacrificing so much of myself for this job that nobody gave two shits about me. And yes, and I was even saving lives. And it was still psychologically damaging enough that I wasn't getting appreciation. Like, we need it.
That probably links back to your number one of like alignment with your purpose. So like you'd use the example of like renting dumpsters or fencing. If the purpose of those businesses was to make money, then yeah, if they're doing well, then yeah, they probably are fulfilling that service. But like for you, it seems like the purpose is to like help others and like teach them to build their businesses. So again, kind of, I mean, all this stuff is very intertwined.
Totally. Yeah. And I think if you pursue your true purpose, nobody's true purpose is renting dumpsters or porta potties or whatever weird things. Like, yeah, they're getting money and whatever, and that's great. And there are people out there who just do things for money, and that's cool for them. Around here, we do things that aligns with us, right? And I think that because it's an even more personal journey that we're really putting so much of ourselves into, it's important to get that affirmation and that positive feedback and knowing that you're making an impact on people. So sign number 4 that you're on the right track is that you're able to continuously grow and learn, and that you can evolve in both your skills and your mindset, that you can embrace new challenges, get out of your comfort zone, and just continue developing and improving yourself and just growing over time, that you've basically created the space to be able to do that. I say on this podcast all the time that entrepreneurship is a journey of self-discovery, and that never ends. And the more you learn and the more you grow, the more you realize that there's even more learning and growing you can do. And it's just this never-ending cycle that's very awesome. And I felt very stunted in that way when I was in my old career as a vet. Like, I didn't feel like there was much more growth that I could do as a person because I was so freaking exhausted 24/7. I wasn't going to like go on this whole self-help journey or journey of self-discovery. There wasn't much for me to learn. You know, I would go to these veterinary conferences every year and they were still teaching shit that was 20 years old. And as an entrepreneur, I feel like I'm just always growing and learning. And I think that's a sign as well that you're on the right track. I feel like that's also kind of something psychologically that we need. And if we are stunted in that way, it doesn't feel right.
So can I piggyback here?
Yeah.
I had a similar thing, but different in that when I was working my corporate job, after I got home from work, like I had my normal things, cook, eat, workout, chores, blah, blah, blah. But I usually was like so like mentally and even like kind of physically exhausted. Like I had no interest in like bettering myself as a person or like learning extra things or pursuing, I guess, my passions but I wasn't like pursuing getting better. And I think now, at least recently within the last like year or two, as things have kind of settled off, like I'm really embracing that. I'm just like it's really fun.
Yeah.
Like pick up a book on something that I never would have wanted to learn before. Or we've been watching a bunch of documentaries on like the brain and the mind. And like I have the space now to like kind of learn. And I think
you didn't have that before.
Yeah. So it's like really, it's fascinating of all the things that like are out there that are just interesting to learn, and whether that makes me a better person or smarter or
Yeah.
more productive, who knows? But like I'm
But
finding
you have
value
the
in it.
capacity to do it,
Yeah.
which is huge. That reminds me to that couple that we met at breakfast in Patagonia that had quit their corporate jobs, and they were 1 month into like a trip around the world or something. And the guy was like, I can feel myself becoming more creative and I'm dreaming again and stuff like that. And like, that's the kind of stuff that I want everybody to experience. You know, if you are in a 9 to 5 job, you really are stunted. And there's really so much brain power going towards this shitty job that you can't use it for other things. And it sucks. And then even if you're an entrepreneur, sometimes we get so wrapped up in our jobs that we almost become employees of our business. And you know, especially photographers, they can be stuck editing and doing all this stuff and like basically just become that burnt out employee that they're trying to avoid being. And that's why they made the business. And you can, you know, stunt your growth and learning then. So if you don't have that capacity to grab a book and just read it because of the tidbits you might get out of it so that you can think a different way, then you probably are not on the right track. And then sign number 5 is a sense of well-being and balance, and that you have that work-life balance. You have that balance between work and relationships and health and rest, and you're prioritizing yourself and your self-care and your well-being. And it's not just all about work. And I've talked about this a lot, that I'm not the best at prioritizing self-care. So I would say that I'm lacking on this one. But if I got that under control, like I would so be on the right track. I'd be hitting all of these 5 signs and I'd be doing great. So that would be my number 5 sign that you're on the right track, is that you have a sense of balance, a sense of well-being, and you're taking care of yourself. You ready to share your 6 signs that you're on the right track?
Yeah. So my 6 are not titled the same as yours, but there's a lot of overlap, so we can kind of crank through them pretty quick. One that you didn't really talk about was being financially literate, knowing your debts, your savings, your expenses, your incomes, basically like everything that's going on in your business and or your personal side, like know where your money is coming and going.
I agree that that one is huge, and I feel like everybody needs to learn that stuff, especially business owners. There's so many business owners that basically, I don't know what they think. They think that just magically all the money stuff is going to sort itself out when really you have to like very actively sort it all out. And yeah, that's a huge one. And it's really hard to be successful in anything if you don't understand money.
Yeah. And even if you have like an accountant or a bookkeeper, like knowing what's going on or what kind of work they're doing to like get you those results or to get you like your balance sheets, like you need to know that. Whether you do it or not, you just need to know it. Yeah, so that was number 1. Number 2, again, this one is probably most similar to, I think maybe your number 1, but you have a vision on where your life is headed. So again, yeah, we kind of talked about that like horizon goal, but something to go after and have a strong reason why.
What is your horizon goal?
Well, I'm not perfect, Megan. We talk about these things. We talk about a lot of things. And I feel like between you and or me, we're often not the best at them. Like we both have our strong points and our weak points. And so
I think that's what makes us so relatable, is that we don't pretend to have all of our shit together.
Yeah.
But yeah, so my horizon goal is like a house in Taos with big windows and pit bulls on a ton of beds and our little farm outside, you know, and I'm working a few hours a day, but I'm also hiking and skiing and actually prioritizing my self-care and reading fiction novels and stuff like that. And just like waking up when our roosters start cawing in the morning or something, right? And Todd doesn't really have a horizon goal.
I'm still working it out.
Yeah.
I think I'm getting closer. I did some journaling today, and February wasn't like my best month for a lot of different reasons, but I think that I did get to spend my time doing a lot of things that I want to be doing. So like traveling, skiing, and a lot of time with the dogs. Yeah. Those are my 3 big things that I think were wins for February. So some version of that.
Yeah. But you're happy to live in my horizon goal.
Yeah, I'm definitely in like a support role for sure.
Yeah.
And what you said sounds pretty good. Number 3. So you're experiencing some level of discomfort. And this was one that just kind of came to me in the last couple of days as we were prepping for this one. And I know our last episode, which would have been episode 53, we talked about the comfort zone conundrum.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if you're living outside of that comfort zone in some kind of discomfort, then I think that means that you're, again, on the right track, but you're like tackling hard challenges and you're growing and learning.
100% agree. I feel like anytime I've checked in with myself to be like, am I on the right track? Am I doing what I need to be doing to achieve my goals and live the life on my terms? And I've realized, man, I'm like just coasting in my comfort zone. It's nice to do that for a little while, but it gets old. Things stagnate. So that's always been kind of like my light bulb moment. Like, oh shit, I've been in my comfort zone for a little too long. I need to get out there and start doing something uncomfortable.
Yeah. All right. My number 4 was you value and put forth effort to better yourself. So I think that was maybe your number 5.
Yeah.
And kind of the different kind of sections of that, I'm like thinking about like physical, mental, or your mind, and then like the spiritual well-being. So like there's kind of 3 different facets of that. And it's hard to get all 3 of those 10 out of 10. So yeah, on any given day, you may be strong or weaker in those different kind of pillars, but like knowing what those values are and like what you're going to be putting your effort towards, I think is super important. Like, again, maybe that's kind of tied to this horizon goal of the better version of you that's out there.
And I think this is important too, because so many people sacrifice themselves, their physical, mental, spiritual well-being. They sacrifice that in order to pursue goals. That's not what we want to do. We want our goals to support being the best version of ourselves and bettering ourselves physically, mentally, and spiritually. So that totally makes sense that should be in the check-in, you know, like, am I bettering myself or am I sacrificing myself? Because you can't really do that. You can't sacrifice, at least long term.
Yeah. So my number 5, again, similar to one of yours, you take pride and find some kind of fulfillment from something in your life. And I kind of jotted down a couple notes of like, maybe it is your work. And like we find between us, like we find a lot of value in our work and we like enjoy it and do it quite often. But yeah, so like it could be your work, your own business, could be your family. It could be like more tangible things like your bank account. Is that number what you want it to be? And like, do you find value or like fulfillment in like hitting that target?
I like that. I do find fulfillment in seeing bank account numbers going up. It's definitely very fulfilling. But yeah, all of those things, family, work, friends, business, money, all that stuff.
And then kind of similar to that, number 6 was that you have friends, family, and a community that supports you. Yeah, because life's hard and like doing it by yourself is even harder. So like having folks that you can like just talk with, spitball, like bounce back and things off, or like even if like people don't necessarily relate. So like my family doesn't come from like an entrepreneurial background. It's not something I can chat with them about like to get advice or like to go into the details, but I do know that they support that and they know that it's making me happy. So just knowing that is super powerful.
Yeah. Our families always are happy for us and what we're doing.
Yeah. And
even if they don't understand it.
Yeah. And then on the flip side of that, like speaking with like colleagues and people that are actually like going through kind of the same grind, because like our problems aren't unique. Like having someone else kind of go through that and like reaffirm like, oh yeah, you were doing the right things. We're on the right track. This is just part of the growth. Yeah.
The struggle is real, but it means you're doing the right thing. You're on the right track. Yeah. Community is huge. Speaking of community, I wasn't even going to plug this, but speaking of community and getting out of your comfort zone and having a vision and putting value out there and taking pride in like all of these things, actually, we just recently opened up early bird tickets for Elopement Con 2024. The elopement community is such a niche photography community, and there's really no conference for it. There's tons of conferences for wedding photography, family, newborn, everything. There's nothing for elopements. So I decided to create one. And it's virtual this year. We are hoping to make it in person at some point. But we are selling early bird tickets right now. They start at $7 and they are early bird until March 28th. So when you hear this, you can actually go buy tickets. We have 30 speakers that are going to share lessons on topics from storytelling to pricing to marketing to SEO to client experience to
business operations,
AI, so much stuff. I mean, you were just going through all the speaker topics the other day and like walked out into the kitchen and we're like, Megan, this is so good. All the topics are so good. And so I'm super proud that we are putting this together. I'm super excited by how the elopement community has welcomed it so quickly. And all the speakers are awesome. They're all people who have built their businesses more recently. Like they didn't go Instagram famous in 2016 or something. They've built businesses that are thriving in today's market with today's economy and with today's algorithm, like they are here to give you all amazing advice for your business. And I am so stoked. It's in May. And so there's still time to get tickets, but we are running a discount on tickets from now until March 28th.
And we'll leave a link in the show notes.
Yeah.
And I do want to do an episode maybe after we have the event and after we like kind of decompress about like the whole process of like putting together, because like hosting a conference is something brand new for both of us.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be fun to kind of unpack it and we'll maybe see if it's something we're going to continue. I hope we do.
Yeah, that's the plan.
And kind of how it
bigger and better every year is what my plan is.
Yeah. So we should save an episode for kind of mid-year.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Cool. Well, thanks so much for listening to this episode. Make sure to check in with yourself to see if you're on the right track. If you're not, you can pivot. You can find your purpose and your values and your vision and start executing it and start living life on your terms. Thanks so much for joining us on this episode of Stoked with Megan McPhail. If you enjoyed the show and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, leave a review, and tell a friend. If you're looking for more inspiring content, check us out on Instagram at Stoked with Megan McPhail. And to learn more about my business coaching and how I can personally help you quit your 9-to-5, visit my website at meganmcphail.com. I hope this leaves you feeling stoked. See you next week.